The career-long NASCAR Underdog, J.D. McDuffie. J.D. McDuffie was a former NASCAR Cup Series, Busch Series, and ARCA Series owner-driver that competed from 1963 through 1991. He almost always owned his own equipment, though he ran his operation on very limited funding. A smart driver able to get the most out of his underfunded race team. John Delphus McDuffie Jr. was born on December 5, 1938, in Upper Little River Township, North Carolina. After attending his first race at Bowman Gray Stadium in 1948, he was inspired by drivers such as Curtis Turner, Glenn Wood, Billy Myers, and others to become a race car driver. Early on, he began racing on dirt, picking the number 70 early in his racing career, both because it was easy to paint and remember. McDuffie was able to win several small races throughout the Carolinas, including a track championship at a small dirt track near Rockingham, North Carolina. In 1963, McDuffie made his NASCAR Grand National, now NASCAR Cup Series, debut at Racing Association of Myrtle Beach Incorporated Speedway, near Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. McDuffie was an expert dirt racer. He never had similar success in the NASCAR Cup Series. In '63, McDuffie made 12 Cup Series starts, behind the wheel of a self-owned number 76 Ford. His best start was 6th at Columbia in the late summer, and his best finish was 8th twice at New Asheville in the summer and Hickory in the fall. Overall, in 12 starts, McDuffie scored 3 top 10s, finishing 46th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Going back to dirt racing for the 1964 and 65 seasons, returning to the NASCAR Cup Series starting in 1966, when he made 36 starts out of a 49-race schedule, as well as a one-off start during the 1967 season, behind the wheel of his self-owned number 70 Ford. McDuffie's best start was 6th at Starlight Speedway in the spring of 1966, and his best finish was 5th at Spartanburg in the early summer of 1966. Overall, in 37 starts, McDuffie scored 1 top 5 and 9 top 10s, finishing 27th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings in 1966. For the 1968 NASCAR Cup Series season, J.D. McDuffie continued to drive his self-owned number 70 Buick, making 32 starts throughout a 49-race schedule. His best start was 7th at Asheville in the early summer, and his best finish was 6th at Greenville-Pickens Speedway in the early summer. Overall, in 32 starts, McDuffie scored 9 top 10s, finishing 24th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. McDuffie attempted his first full-time season in the Cup Series in 1969, making the majority of his starts behind the wheel of his self-owned number 70 Buick, with the exception of 5 starts, 2 behind the wheel of Don Tarr's number 0 Chevrolet. JD's best start behind the wheel of that number 0 was 25th at Martinsville in the fall, and his best finish behind the wheel of that number 0 was 20th at Rockingham in the fall. Then he made a one-off start apiece behind the wheel of E.C. Reed's number 09 Chevrolet at Daytona in the summer, starting 34th and finishing 40th after an oil leak on lap 6 ended his race early, and North Wilkesboro in the fall behind the wheel of G.C. Spencer's number 8 Plymouth, starting 17th and finishing 12th. The final one-off start that he made came at Charlotte in the fall, behind the wheel of Amlo Langley's number 84 Ford, starting 32nd and finishing 24th. Now, as far as McDuffie's number 70 Buick, he made 47 attempts, qualifying 45 times. His best start was 7th at Greenville-Pickens Speedway in the early summer, and his best finish was 6th twice at Richmond in the spring and Greenville-Pickens Speedway in the early summer. Overall, in 50 starts, McDuffie scored 12 top 10s, finishing 14th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. This would begin a 13-year stretch where he would finish inside the top 20 in final Cup Series point standings. With the changing of a decade into the 1970s, J.D. McDuffie in 1970 would continue to make starts in the NASCAR Cup Series, behind the wheel of his self-owned number 70 Buicks and Mercurys, making 38 attempts, qualifying 35 times. McDuffie's best start was 6th twice at Albany-Saratoga Speedway in the summer and Bowman Gray Stadium in the late summer. His best finish was 5th at Nashville Fairgrounds in the summer. Overall, in 36 starts, McDuffie scored 1 top 5 and 10 top 10s, finishing 16th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. During the 1971 NASCAR Cup Series season, tobacco company R.J. Reynolds began negotiations to sponsor the NASCAR Cup Series. McDuffie made 40 starts in the Cup Series behind the wheel of his self-owned number 70 Buicks and Mercuries. His best start was 6th twice, at Myers Speedway and Albany-Saratoga Speedway, both coming in the summer. His best finish was 3rd at Albany-Saratoga Speedway in the fall, as well as making 3 separate one-off starts apiece. The first behind the wheel of Roger Lewinsky's number 88 Dodge at Rockingham in the fall, starting 31st and finishing 14th. In the fall, he made his 2 other one-off starts of the 71 season at Darlington behind the wheel of Junior Field's number 91 Chevrolet, starting 31st and finishing 40th. Then 2 races later at Charlotte behind the wheel of Raymond Williams' number 47 Ford, starting 27th and finishing 22nd. Overall, in 43 out of a possible 48 races that made up the 71 schedule, McDuffie scored 2 top 5s and 8 top 10s, finishing 9th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. This would end up being the highest that McDuffie would ever finish in final Cup Series point standings. Starting in 1972, the NASCAR Grand National Series became the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. As part of negotiations, in order to look like a more professional sport, NASCAR cut the schedule from around 50 races a season down to around 30 races a season. JD's best start was 12th at Martinsville in the fall, and his best finish was 5th at Bristol in the summer, also making 2 one-off starts during the season, making 1 one-off start behind the wheel of George Alfried's number 0 at Darlington in the fall, starting 36th and finishing 15th. The next race that he made a one-off start was at Richmond in the fall, behind the wheel of Doc Faustina's number 5 Dodge, starting 20th and finishing 5th. Overall, in 27 out of a possible 31 race schedule, McDuffie scored 1 top 5 and 2 top 10s, finishing 18th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Since there were so many short tracks across the Southeast lost their NASCAR Cup Series events when NASCAR cut the schedule nearly in half, NASCAR formed a series called the Grand National East Series. McDuffie made 2 starts in the newly formed series in 1972, behind the wheel of a self-owned number 70 Chevrolet. His best start was 10th and his best finish was 7th, both coming at Bowman Gray Stadium in the late summer. Overall, in 2 Grand National East Series starts, McDuffie scored 1 top 10 finish. The following season in 1973, J.D. McDuffie ran the full schedule in the NASCAR Cup Series, making 27 starts out of the 28 race schedule, running the entire 73 season behind the wheel of a self-owned number 70 Chevrolet. McDuffie's best start was 10th at Atlanta in the summer, and his best finish was 5th 3 times, at Darlington in the spring, Bristol in the summer, then Dover in the fall. Overall, in 27 starts, McDuffie scored 3 top 5s and 10 top 10s, finishing 10th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. As far as the Grand National East Series, McDuffie entered the 200-lap race at Fayetteville, behind the wheel of a self-owned number 70 Chevrolet, starting 6th and finishing 9th. The 1974 NASCAR Cup Series season was J.D. McDuffie's first complete full-time season, making all 30 starts that were on the Cup Series schedule for the 1974 season, behind the wheel of his self-owned McDuffie Racing number 70 Chevrolet. Jimmy Bird served as his crew chief starting in 74. McDuffie's best start was 8th, coming at North Wilkesboro in the spring. His best finish was 7th twice, at Richmond and Nashville in the spring. Overall, in 30 starts, McDuffie scored 7 top 10s, finishing 12th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Again, McDuffie had plans on running the entire Cup Series schedule in 1975, remaining behind the wheel of that number 70 Chevrolet. But after a lap 3 accident in the Daytona 500, McDuffie was taken out of not only the event, but the following 4 races, before returning at race 7 in North Wilkesboro in the spring, starting 14th and finishing 11th, making 26 starts throughout the 75 season. McDuffie's best start was 5th at Nashville Fairgrounds in the spring, and his best finish was 5th at Richmond in the fall. Overall, in 26 starts, J.D. scored 1 top 5 and 6 top 10s, finishing 18th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. For the 1976 NASCAR Cup Series season, J.D. McDuffie made 30 starts, 29 behind the wheel of a self-owned number 70 Chevrolet, and a one-off start behind the wheel of a number 33 Chevrolet owned by Jeff Handy. After a pretty strong start to the season, that saw him spend 9 out of the first 10 weeks inside the top 10 in points. By season's end, he slowly fell to 12th in final points. McDuffie's best start was 9th at Richmond in the spring, and his best finish was 5th at North Wilkesboro in the spring. Overall, in 30 starts, McDuffie scored 1 top 5 and 8 top 10s, finishing 12th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Spending all but 1 week throughout the 1977 NASCAR Cup Series season between 11th and 13th in point standings, remaining behind the wheel of his self-owned number 70 Chevrolet. He ran the full season. McDuffie's best start was 10th twice at both Richmond races. His best finish was 8th twice at Nashville Fairgrounds and Talladega in the summer. Overall, in 30 starts, McDuffie scored 4 top 10s, finishing 12th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings, returning once again for the 1978 NASCAR Cup Series season, making all 30 starts behind the wheel of his self-owned number 70 Bailey Excavating Chevrolet. McDuffie began the season outside the top 20 in points, but by season's end, he rebounded back up to the 11th position. Running a set of McCreary tires, McDuffie's best start was 1st at Dover in the fall. This was his first and only career pole. His best finish was 5th at Nashville Fairgrounds in the summer. Overall, in 30 starts, McDuffie scored 1 pole, 0 wins, 1 top 5, and 6 top 10s, finishing 11th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Bailey's Excavating became the number 70 Chevrolet race team's full-time sponsor starting in 1979. McDuffie qualified that number 70 Chevrolet in all 31 races in 79. This was a pretty solid year for McDuffie and the number 70 team, spending 12 weeks throughout the season inside the top 10 in points. JD's best start was 7th at Bristol in the spring, and his best finish was 5th at Nashville Fairgrounds in the spring. Overall, in 31 starts, McDuffie scored 1 top 5 and 7 top 10s, finishing 13th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Another brand new decade, the 1980s. For McDuffie, this began the slow decline performance for McDuffie, as the need for corporate sponsorship became the norm as the costs continued to rise in the sport. Lower underfunded teams such as McDuffie Racing would see their last competitive days in this decade, sadly. In 1980, McDuffie continued to do what he had grew to know, race his self-owned number 70 Bailey's Excavating Chevrolet, making 30 starts behind the wheel of his number 70. And after missing the Daytona 500 in 1980, McDuffie drove Henley Gray's number 19 Buick. McDuffie's best start was 7th at Richmond in the spring, and his best finish was 9th 3 times at Richmond and Atlanta in the spring, then Riverside in the summer. Overall, in 31 starts, McDuffie scored 3 top 10s, finishing 16th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. In 1981, J.D. McDuffie only qualified for 28 out of a 31 race schedule, remaining behind the wheel of his self-owned number 70 Bailey Excavating Pontiac, spending the season between 12th and 17th in point standings. His best start was 10th, and his best finish was 10th, both coming at Richmond in the spring. Overall, in 28 starts, McDuffie scored 1 top 10, finishing 17th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. The final full season that McDuffie would ever run in the NASCAR Cup Series came in 1982, making all 30 starts, 29 behind the wheel of his self-owned number 70 Bailey's Excavating Pontiac, and a one-off start behind the wheel of Cecil Gordon's number 24 Buick at Martinsville in the fall, when McDuffie missed the field as his number 70. McDuffie's best start was 14th at Riverside in the fall. His best finish was 10th at Rockingham in the spring. He ran a second Junior Johnson race car at Riverside in case Darrell Waltrip's race car didn't start for some reason, so Darrell Waltrip would be able to jump into McDuffie's race car, so Waltrip would be able to win the series championship. Also, McDuffie made 5 NASCAR Late Model Sportsman Series, now O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, starts behind the wheel of his self-owned number 70 Bailey's Temple Pontiac. His best start was 12th twice, at Darlington in the spring and Rockingham in the summer. His best finish was 15th at Charlotte in the fall. By 1983, J.D. McDuffie started missing races sometimes, making 27 attempts, qualifying 25 times for NASCAR Cup Series races, still behind the wheel of his self-owned number 70 Pontiac, spending his entire season inside the 20s in point standings. McDuffie's best start was 14th at Martinsville in the fall. His best finish was 11th at Richmond in the fall. His best finish was 11th at Richmond in the fall. Overall, in 25 starts, McDuffie scored 3 top 15s and 7 top 20s, finishing 26th in the final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Again, McDuffie made 5 NASCAR Late Model Sportsman Series starts behind the wheel of his number 03 Roberts Used Cars Chevrolet. McDuffie's best start was 21st and his best finish was 11th, both coming at Darlington in the fall. Overall, in 5 NASCAR Late Model Sportsman Series starts, McDuffie scored 3 top 15s and 4 top 20s. McDuffie also made his ARCA Series debut at Talladega in the spring, behind the wheel of a self-owned number 7 Pontiac, starting and parking. 1984, things went downhill even further, still behind the wheel of a self-owned number 70 Wilder's Pontiac, attempting 24 NASCAR Cup Series races, only qualifying for 16. Spending all but 3 weeks throughout this season outside the top 30 in points. He was plagued by engine and mechanical issues, resulting in 10 DNFs and only 16 starts. McDuffie's best start was 20th, and his best finish was 12th, both coming at Bristol in the late summer. Overall, in 16 starts, McDuffie scored 1 top 15 and 3 top 20s, finishing 35th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. At Charlotte in the spring, McDuffie made a one-off start behind the wheel of a number 72 Thomas Brothers Country Ham Oldsmobile, starting 31st and finishing 8th in the Busch Series, as well as making a one-off start in the ARCA Series, at Talladega in the summer, behind the wheel of a self-owned number 72 Oldsmobile, starting 9th and finishing 21st. For the first time in a few seasons, JD decided to attempt the full NASCAR Cup Series schedule in 1985. Behind the wheel of his number 70 Rumble Furniture Chevrolets, Fords, and Pontiacs, making 27 attempts, qualifying 23 times. Starting his season in the 30s in points, but he worked his way into the 20s and stayed there. McDuffie's best start was 22nd in North Wilkesboro in the spring, and his best finish was 15th twice at Talladega in the spring and Martinsville in the fall. Overall, in 23 starts, McDuffie scored 2 top 15s and 4 top 20s, finishing 27th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. That following season, McDuffie attempted the full season once again, attempting 27 events, qualifying 20 times in 1986, remaining behind the wheel of his self-owned number 70 Rumble Furniture Winkle Pontiac. His son Jeff took over as crew chief starting in 1986, spending his season slowly climbing out of the 30s and into the 20s in points. McDuffie's best start was 20th, and his best finish was 14th, both coming at Riverside in early June. Overall, in 20 starts, McDuffie scored 1 top 15 and 9 top 20s, finishing 26th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. In an exhibition race at Atlanta in the spring, McDuffie ran the Atlanta Invitational, starting 14th and finishing 13th after an engine failure ended his race early. In the ARCA Series, JD made 2 starts at both Talladega races, behind the wheel of a number 77 Pontiac in the spring and behind the wheel of a number 78 Pontiac in the summer. His best start was 24th and his best finish was 6th, both coming at Talladega in the summer. Winkle continued to own the number 70 Pontiac for the first 3 races of the 1987 season. The remaining 26 races of the NASCAR Cup Series season, McDuffie went back to owning his own number 70 Rumble Furniture Pontiac, slowly falling from 21st in points down to 30th by season's end. McDuffie made 17 starts throughout the season, scoring 3 top 20s, finishing 30th in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Also running the Winston Open, starting 30th and finishing 16th. Things continued to go downhill for J.D. McDuffie and his race team. Prior to his 125-mile qualifying race for the Daytona 500, someone stole his racing gloves. After a fiery accident on lap 3, McDuffie suffered 2nd and 3rd degree burns on his hands, still behind the wheel of his self-owned number 70 Rumble Furniture Pontiac, making 16 attempts, qualifying twice throughout the entire 1988 season. McDuffie's best start was 35th at Watkins Glen in the summer, and his best finish was 25th at Dover in the spring, finishing 61st in final NASCAR Cup Series point standings. Down in the ARCA Series, McDuffie made a one-off start in Atlanta in the fall, starting 40th and finishing 10th, behind the wheel of a self-owned number 79 Rumble Furniture Pontiac. The following season, in 1989, McDuffie attempted 21 races, qualifying for 7 of them in the NASCAR Cup Series. Once again, behind the wheel was self-owned number 70 Rumble Furniture Pontiac. McDuffie's best start was 29th, and his best finish was 24th, both coming at Daytona in the spring. In the Winston Open, the last chance qualifier race for the All-Star race, McDuffie started 29th and finished 26th after a lap 45 crash. Also making the first two starts of the season in the ARCA Series. Behind the wheel of his self-owned number 79 Rumble Furniture Pontiac. His best start was 28th and his best finish was 39th, both coming at Atlanta in the spring. With yet another new decade upon the world of NASCAR, the 1990s, for J.D. McDuffie, 1990 was another long season. Remaining behind the wheel was number 70 Pontiac, starting 28th and finishing 25th in his 125-mile qualifying race, missing the Daytona 500 in 1990. McDuffie would attempt 25 NASCAR Cup Series races throughout the 90 season, only qualifying for 8 events. His best start was 30th at Bristol in the spring, and his best finish was 22nd at Watkins Glen in the late summer. In the ARCA Series, McDuffie made 2 starts, behind the wheel of a self-owned number 70 Pontiac. His best start was 36th twice, at Talladega in the summer and Michigan in the late summer. His best finish was 16th at Talladega in the summer. Overall, in 2 ARCA Series starts, McDuffie scored 1 top 20. The 1991 NASCAR Cup Series season ended up being his final season, starting 27th and finishing 21st in his 125-mile qualifying race for the Daytona 500, missing the race once again, making 15 attempts in the Cup Series, qualifying 5 times. McDuffie's best start was 35th twice, at Dover in the early summer and Watkins Glen in the late summer. His best finish was 25th at Pocono in the summer. McDuffie also ran the Winston Open again, trying to make the All-Star race, starting 26th and finishing 28th. In the ARCA Series, McDuffie made 3 starts for 3 different owners. One behind the wheel was self-owned number 70 Pontiac at Talladega in the spring, starting 39th and finishing 25th. Then one behind the wheel of Wally Finney's number 08 Oldsmobile at Pocono in the early summer, starting 26th and finishing 19th. The final ARCA Series start that McDuffie would ever make would come in Michigan, behind the wheel of a number 70 Pontiac. That was actually in Marty Burke's name, starting 31st and finishing 13th. The day before McDuffie's final start, he had no idea what lay ahead the following day, winning a celebrity race at Shangri-La Speedway, just up the road from Watkins Glen International Speedway, the night before. At Watkins Glen, during the late summer Cup Series race, McDuffie was involved in an accident on the 5th lap of the race, between the S's and the loop chute turn 5. McDuffie suffered a mechanical failure, making him collide with Jimmy Means. McDuffie's left front spindle broke off of his car. This is what led him to losing brakes and not being able to steer his car. On top of that, there was no gravel trap, but rather grass, is what McDuffie skidded across and hit the ARMCO outside retaining wall with such force that the car rebounded and rotated a full 180 degrees in the air before coming to rest on its roof. Jimmy Means was able to slow down his race car enough to only suffer minor cuts and bruises. He climbed out of his race car and checked on McDuffie. After Means peered into McDuffie's crashed number 70, he began frantically signaling for assistance. McDuffie died on impact due to a basalar skull fracture, same thing that several race car drivers have lost their lives from. An investigation proved that a tire from the tire barrier actually came into the passenger side of his race car, causing his fatal head injuries. Watkins Glen International Speedway did install a bus stop chicane just before the entrance to Turn 5, the area of the track that was in question. They also installed a gravel trap that they have since paved over. So, in 653 NASCAR Cup Series starts, McDuffie scored 1 pole, 0 wins, 12 top 5s, and 106 top 10 finishes, for the best points finish of 9th in 1971. In 11 Busch Series starts, McDuffie scored 1 top 10 finish. In 3 Grand National East Series starts, McDuffie scored 2 top 10s. In 12 ARCA Series starts, McDuffie scored 2 top 10 finishes. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care.